I don't think a person should be in ketosis 24/7. I think that's a bad idea, in fact. That will tend to impact your metabolic rate, your thyroid function, your kidney function, all in a negative way. People who talk about wanting to be in ketosis and stay in ketosis all the time, that's an error. That's another theological standpoint, another position that's often promoted by people who simply do not know what they are talking about. It's not a good idea. A human is designed to drift in and out of ketosis during a 24-hour period, where what you get is in the 4 to 6 hours postprandially after your meal, your one meal, you won't be in ketosis, obviously. Your body absorbs all of that nutrients, partitions it off, sends it where it needs to go, does its thing. Maybe then the the blood sugar starts to drop slightly over the next 10, 12 hours. So by the end of the next 10 to 12 hours, probably just before your morning phenomenon is where your ketone level will be the highest, I would suspect. But in my case, if I'm going to use one of those stupid stick things, by the way, don't waste your money on those things, people. Don't chase ketones. Don't test your ketones. It will not tell you anything worthwhile knowing. But mine generally remains steadfastly in the pink. It never gets as high as purple, unless I'm fasting for several days at a time. And that's normal. That's the body doing what it's supposed to do. It provides the ketones when the blood sugar drops below a certain set point because you haven't eaten for 12, 14, 16 hours.
Let's talk more about the details of that period. I think you said it was about 4 to 6 hours after the meal, you would be kicked out of ketosis. Is that due to the protein and gluconeogenesis? Because
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Explain that more, because some people, I feel like in the carnivore world who are having quote unquote no carbs I feel like they say they're in ketosis all the time.
Okay. The human body has several tissues that absolutely require glucose to function. If you were to remove all the glucose from your circulation, from your blood, all the glucose that's stored in your muscles, all the glucose that's stored in your liver, drain your body of glucose, you will die within about 4.5 minutes from that point. Your brain requires glucose to run. It will not run without glucose. You will die. And that's the argument that a lot of these ill-educated people, or people who actually are educated enough to know better, but no, you're not, most people, will try and fool you with. So your brain needs glucose. Without glucose in your brain, you're going to die, so you better eat some glucose, obviously, is what they'll say. That completely ignores the fact that the human body is capable of making all the glucose it needs itself from non-glucose precursors. These precursors are the glycerol backbones from triacylglycerol molecules, fat molecules. So a fat molecule is a glycerol with 3 fatty acid chains off it. We use the fatty acid chains for energy. The glycerol is left behind. What are we going to do with that? We can turn that into sugar. Cool. Lactate, produced mostly through muscle metabolism, but not entirely through muscle metabolism. But there's a level of lactate that's in your blood at all times. If that level of lactate starts to build up, then your body is more than capable of using that lactate to form sugar, for example. And a third example of one of these non-glucose precursors is there are several of the amino acids that make up proteins that can readily be transmuted into glucose as well. So if you're eating a diet that is devoid of carbohydrates, and when I say devoid, we need to be careful because even meat contains some carbohydrate. The fact that it says 0 on the label just means it's less than 1 gram per 100. And so on the label, they're allowed to write 0, ostensibly 0, but there is some carb in meat. Okay. But let's say you're eating very, very little carbohydrate. You still need to maintain a certain level of glucose in your blood so that your brain can function. So your body has to make that glucose. And it'll make it from the glycerol backbones from fat molecules, and it will make it from protein.
And it makes enough that we're going to be kicked out of ketosis.
Yeah. if you eat a reasonable bolus of food in one meal a day. If you split the same amount of food into 3 or 4 meals, you might not get the same response. And you might struggle.
Got it. That's important nuance there. And you're saying if somebody were to do that, they may stay in ketosis, which wouldn't be a good thing.
Possibly.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Insulin resistance is a normal, natural, indicated, and useful biological process. It is not a pathology, and it is not the cause of diabetes. The diet that these so-called scientists